But like all these pieces of technology, there's stuff where like if you're on a call with someone, or again, if you're talking to someone in real space while you're on this thing, people use hand gestures all the time, right? And this thing is just misfiring clicks just all the time.
Italians are in shambles right now.
Oh my God.
Just
Butterscotch.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 453 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast of Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam and I'm the miscellaneous programmer.
I'm Sam and I'm not the programmer.
And this is a show where we talk about life, business, and working in the games industry. Today is February 2nd, 22x4. And before we get started, we have a warning. There's going to be swears and profanes on this show. And we'd also like to thank our recurring supporters over at moneygrab.bscotch.net. Thank you so much for the recurring donations to help keep the podcast going. All right, now we got just like a little bit of stuff to talk about today. A little bit. And then we'll get into some questions. So the one thing that we want to talk about, the news item, is the Apple Vision Pro.
It's out.
It comes out today.
Yeah.
So what is the Apple Vision Pro? And what do we think is going to happen with this thing?
So it is another VR headset, though I think Apple's overall approach would be to try to suggest that it's an AR headset, meaning that it puts stuff in the world that you then see. So you're not
even that,
trapped.
It's actually neither of those things, Sam. It's a spatial computing device.
Exactly. So
I imagine if you make stuff for it, they probably make you say it that way.
Yes, it's called Spatial OS. It's their own a new operating system that runs on this thing. And I think the one benefit it has over other VR platforms, if you're going to get into one, and I am going to call it a VR platform because
that is what it is.
That is what it is. This is not Apple's marketing house. I don't care. So the one benefit, though, is that it actually shares the library with your iPad. So let's say you got a bunch of stuff basically, that you've had accumulated in your library. It's kind of like your Steam library, right? If you pop that bad boy on, you got access to it there. The question is,
if it's
compatible. Yeah. And that's kind of, there's a variety of things that have come out about this so far. One of the best reviews I read was in The Verge. And the reason I was curious about this was because it's always one, Apple does do some things very, very well, and some certain parts of that are like our hardware aspects, right? Certain pieces of tech where they're like, they fling it up to 11, right? And they certainly did that with some of the stuff, like some of essentially the bits and pieces in this headset. But I think the challenge is that while they essentially talk about it as this computing device that you're supposed to, be able to like wear kind of like all day, like work in it, wear it most of the day, whatever else, it's still actually it's a VR headset. And like it kind of comes out that no matter what
it's pretty heavy.
Yeah, no one really wants to wear it that bad, And in order to get like the thing to look a certain way, they like move the battery pack off to the side, like on a separate little dongle, which you never see in marketing images.
You basically keep the battery sort of like in your pocket, attached to a cord. That goes up to the headset, right?
Yeah, and a lot of the other headsets,
which is better than just being like plugged into a wall,
It's better than putting all the weight on your head as well.
Well, it kind of is, except it's a balance. It's actually a balance problem more so than a weight problem. So the headset itself, because it's all front load, most VR headsets put something in the back so that the fact that you have all this computing tech and like video tech on right on your face is basically balanced out by some of the essentially the batteries, some of the other hardware on the back, which means that it might be heavy, but it actually, is balanced on your head. It's not pulling your head forward all the time. It's not the case here because they wanted it to look like a cool, like snowboarding goggles, which it does, to be fair. It looks very kind of Tron-y, but at the same time, apparently not very easy to just kind of like sit in for a long time, which is essentially what their like overall pitch is about it. Like it's a spatial computing device. You're supposed to be able to sit in it and like work on spreadsheets. I don't know why you do that, but you could do that if you want. And so
my position with all these kinds of things is if it reaches a point where it's comfortable to wear and reliable enough that I could just use it, all the time, then it would be really cool to have something like this instead of having giant desktop monitors taking up all this space, because you could just project a monitor into the space above your desk or wherever you want to work. And that to me is like the real selling point of something like this. But because of the form factor and the weight and the battery life and the fact that it's stuck in the Apple ecosystem, blah blah blah, like I can't. This doesn't hit the mark for me.
Yeah,
right.
As a programmer, especially a game programmer, you need access to enormous amounts of processing power and storage and all kinds of stuff, right? So like, if it's basically a branch off of mobile, right? If it's basically like kind of like an iPad operating system, shares that same library, shares all the same limitations and all that kind of stuff, right? Then I imagine they might have some use case where like if you've got a Mac, you can use it as a kind of like to talk to the Mac, or maybe I'm not sure like the full range of what the things you can do that are, but if you couldn't, I would basically be like, yeah, you can't use this as a work device because it's not powerful enough. It's not useful enough. It's too closed. Well, that ecosystem is too closed.
Yeah, well, they've made a lot of these really, really impressive technical advancements on the visuals side, because essentially what they're doing is that it looks like you are seeing the world still, but that's actually being delivered to you from cameras on the front of the device. So you are not just looking at the world. And it's like
so you can look through the. Well, I mean, not literally through it, but like it's a pass-through camera, right?
Exactly.
So you can see the world.
And apparently the latency is good, so it's not like weird lag and stuff. But the problem is, again, like I talked about this a while ago, actually, with HDR and some of the other things. The color space that monitors can render is not the color space that you get to see in the world. It's like half the colors. And
it can't go to full brightness and full darkness, so it's a compressed color space.
Yeah. Well, yeah, not just about brightness. It's literally the colors too. It's
all the colors.
Things, yeah.
And so again, when you talk about like, there's certain kinds of work, sure, that like maybe you could put this on your face and then like put a monitor up in virtual space. But what's weird about that is like, you will not be able to see it as well in some ways versus just a monitor in real space. And so I think that's always where the rub for all this stuff comes in, because it's like it's not your eyes. It's already in a pass-through format of some sort that degrades enough of it that it's just never quite as good as the real world. And that can be fine, but it has to come along with like so many other things that work really well or offer something that is compelling enough that I think you could you could spend the time in there in a way. And it's cool. It's like, oh, cool. But it's a cool gadget, but it's not like actually a revolution of any flavor.
And I'm thinking about this. So I'm kind of on the fence, because back when the iPhone came out, I had a BlackBerry, right? And I was like, who would want to try to type shit on a touchscreen? And I still stand by that.
I do
it's
too,
it's a bad experience. Okay. Like I'm typing at like 10 words per minute on this thing. I'm making typos. I got to delete shit all the time, blah, blah, blah. What I didn't recognize, I think, is that that's actually not that much slower than how most people type on an actual keyboard. Mm-hmm. Whereas I type about 120 words per minute on a keyboard, and so I can just feel my time just being deleted while I try to type stuff on a touchscreen. But that difference is not that stark, because the average typing speed is 30 words per minute.
But I think the other thing though is that the cell is actually not even about productivity on like that micro level, but it's about the app ecosystem.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It's like when the iPhone appeared, I saw it and I was like, who wants this? It has no buttons. There's no keyboard. You can't, like, what can you do with this thing?
Yeah,
right?
What's the use case?
But my reservations about it were not shared by
That's fair.
the majority of the population. And so when I'm looking at this thing, I'm like, well, there's definitely some stuff about it that makes it off limits for a lot of people. Specifically, it's $3,500 for this.
The prices. I'm not going to get.
That's the starting price tag, because
that's the starting price. And if you want it to be and if you want it to be usable, in other words, have some actual storage, because it starts with 256 gigabytes of storage, which is, I mean, if you wanted to get like an SD card that had that, I think that would be like $10 or some shit.
It's basically free.
Yeah. And if you want if you want to get another 256 gigabytes, they're going to charge you $200 more.
Which to me is again the question of like, I'm not really sure who the Vision Pro is for, right? Because
I think I know who it's for. It's for hardcore Apple fanboys and first adopters, where it's a prototype. It's a proof of concept, kind of like maybe almost like the first Apple Watch, right? Where it was like really expensive and couldn't really do that much and didn't really deliver on the promise, but people were excited about,
and that was about it.
Yeah, and people were excited about the concept and like where it's going to go, and so they wanted to like like start to learn it and learn how to use it and get on board, you know?
Yeah, well, because I think,
I don't know.
I don't know. I think it's to me, it's leaves VR where it has always been historically, and to me, it doesn't change anything about where it looks like it's going to go, which is that VR is for fun. That's it. VR and for novelty and because it's cool.
It's for Beat Saber.
It's for Beat Saber. like those are the reasons, right? And so far I haven't seen anything about, in the lead up to its actual launch or in the reviews that have started coming out. I haven't seen anything that suggests that what Apple's doing with the Vision Pro is actually turning it into something that goes beyond this would be neat kind of category of thing,
I agree with that.
But I think it's interesting especially because they've trapped it on the mobile type of system, that closed off system where you don't have control over your device. Like, to me, like, you can't sell that as a work thing, which seems like a lot of what their angle is, because like for me to work on stuff, I need a pretty unconstrained device where I can do whatever I need to do, and that's not the direction they're going with it. If this is the prototype, they're going to this is an entertainment device, just like iOS and iPad, right, and all this stuff.
Yeah,
like these are basically communications and entertainment devices. And
for $3,500,
yeah, that's just
too much.
That to me is the interesting thing is like they could have taken this opportunity to be like to put it more into like to the Mac OS kind of domain, right? Where like a laptop is for work, Mac OS is for work, right? It's for everything else too, right? But it's not.
Except gaming.
Like every time I try to do anything, well, I mean, you technically can play games on a Mac. It's just nobody does, right?
You sure can.
But
somebody reprogrammed a pregnancy test to run Doom. So I mean, yeah, you can play games on a Mac, but there's better options. Mm-hmm. So
is there a list somewhere of all of the weird things people have put Doom on?
I guess the joke is that anytime there's a new electronics device, you can play Doom on it within
moments. I think it was like a pair of earrings or something that somebody made these like they were like a little like some kind of a console, like just like a little LED screen, but because of an LED screen that actually like lit up and had a message on it, that someone was like, I bet you could put whatever's going on in there. I bet you could put Doom on it, and then they did.
I was reading an article this past week that I was like, this has to be bullshit, but I didn't care enough to look into it. So now I'm going to spread some misinformation. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Some scientists were doing some experiments with using actual human brain neurons to create like electrical circuits in computers that they could try to interact with. And they're attempting to get it to run Doom.
I mean, I believe it if they're attempting to do it. I wouldn't believe it if they did it.
Yeah, because it would have to have a way to render it, and I don't know.
Too many things have to be true for it to actually work.
Yeah, but then it's like if anything is vaguely computer-like, people are like, "But can we play Doom on this thing?"
Yeah, I do want to talk about two use case things with usability things with the Vision Pro that I read about that are really interesting because they sound very small, but I think they're one of those things that end up making it a technology that you probably won't actually use very much, even if you get it. And they are. One is that it projects your eyes onto the front of the device.
Yeah.
Okay.
So actually, apparently it doesn't.
No, it does. Like it shows your eyes. So
I saw that in promo videos and stuff, but then in any actual videos of people using it, they keep commenting about how it can't actually do that yet or something like that.
The Verge one, the guy showed it. Yeah,
they did show it?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah,
so there was some mixed messages about whether that was just like a marketing gimmick.
No, it does do it. The problem is that it's weird.
Yeah, it would have been better if it was a marketing gimmick,
Yeah, it's weird for a number of reasons, but one of them is because you don't know when it's doing it always, if that makes sense.
Oh.
So you end up in this, it's like having your mic on Discord or not, and not knowing what the status is, where you're not entirely sure if someone is seeing your eyes, but then also like they're kind of uncanny anyways, because they're like a low, like a grainy kind of. It's taken from inside.
Well, it's 2D.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a 2D image of your eyes.
And then projected image, inches in front of your face.
So if somebody feels like they're making eye contact with you, but actually you're looking at a screen instead, and you don't even see them.
Yes.
So it's like you're looking through people.
Yeah. So
you don't know.
So that's a weird one, right? Because it's like especially when it comes to, I think, people like interacting with other people, there's stuff like that where it's like if you're not able to tell if technically you are looking at someone according to this thing, like if it looks like you're looking at someone, right?
Like imagine you're at a coffee shop.
That's just fucking weird. Yeah, yeah. It's some
at a
guy
coffee shop
just
in the
use
corner.
ghostly eyes just staring at you.
Just staring at you. But actually he's just watching Netflix or something, right?
Yeah.
But like he's just looking right at you, just won't stop looking at you.
Yeah, like, no, dude, like, it's not fun. So there's that piece, which I think makes it just odd when you're, even any context actually, when you're using it, if you're around anyone else. But then the other one is actually a bit more troublesome. And actually it's related to, we talk about Talon, the voice software that we've used to control our devices at various points. And it has actually the same problem as Talon, which is that Talon's great. The voice recognition is super impressive. You customize it, etc. And all it does is when you say a thing, it'll try to do that thing, right? The problem with it is that on occasion, it misreads. There's false positives, essentially a lot, right? But it still does a thing. So the review I was reading, the hand tracking on this thing is apparently fucking awesome. It has like these side mounted like cameras that are tracking your hands at all times. So you can like really, you can just be like kind of like chilling. Apparently you can have your arm up like on a couch or something and it'll somehow still be reading your hand. The problem is they changed it so that there's no, hand controls with this thing like there are with most other VR headsets. So
Yeah, it's
As in,
just,
there's no controllers that you hold on to.
it's just looking at you in the air.
it's just watching your hands. And apparently you to click, you basically like tap your fingers together, like your forefinger and index finger. But like all these pieces of technology, there's stuff where like if you're on a call with someone, or again, if you're talking to someone in real space while you're on this thing, people use hand gestures all the time, right?
Yep.
And this thing's just misfiring clicks fucking constantly, apparently, like to the point where if you're trying to do a variety of things with it, it's just kind of clicking on stuff just all the
Italians
time.
are in shambles right now.
Oh my God. So I was like, yeah, you have to be a person who doesn't talk with your hands to use this at all.
Yeah.
It's like, do a video call with it. And now you're just like, I don't know, opening windows and shit constantly. And so that's one of those ones where I'm like, I understand that you want to make it a super usable thing in terms of like, there's no additional hardware, no peripherals where you have to pick up. But kind of like the Talon thing, what will kill usability for it is like if every time you're trying to use it, sometimes you're just randomly doing shit.
Just random bullshit happens.
Even if it's like fucking 5% of the time. Like it has to be so rare actually that it's kind of impossible, I think, in a system that's just kind of in an automated way detecting what you're trying to do, because it is wrong some portion of the time, especially because, believe it or not, I'd like to send maybe a message to like the San Francisco, the Cupertino crowd. People use their hands for a lot of things during the day, like gesturing while you're talking. I don't doing anything else.
Dishes.
So like, if
It
you're going to
reminds me
use
of their was it a Mac OS update, whichever update it was, where when you're doing like video calls on Mac laptop,
FaceTime.
yeah, maybe it was on FaceTime. It's not on FaceTime specifically. It's like it's like any time you're on camera, basically, it'll overlay interesting things based on like your hand gestures, right? Which is on by default and can be disabled. So like if you do a thumbs up, for example, then it does like basically like emoji like things happen on the screen, right? So they launched this a few months ago, and then and of course, like it's fun that it does that, right?
oh yeah, very
But
cool.
also, it doesn't just. It doesn't. Yeah, that's not necessarily what you want, And especially like as you're saying, if you're a person who just gestures a lot while doing things, then it's basically constantly trying to figure out like
It's just a fireworks show.
it's a
now.
fireworks show basically. So
Yeah,
I don't know how much that's been like toned down since the initial launch, but I remember hearing a lot of very amusing anecdotes about people's strange experiences, like on a call with their therapist, having a particular tense moment, and all of a sudden like bubbles start going up.
That's great.
Well, it reminds me of that video of that lawyer who accidentally turned himself into a cat. He called up a judge, but he couldn't figure out how to turn it off.
Hilarious.
It's like, but again, this is the question of like if people are spending this much money on a device and there's all this weird stuff that happens with it when you're trying to use it for work, whether it's you turn into a cat or false clicks or whatever,
Well, the final usability one for me was the fact that it uses your eyes, because again, there's no controls. So it uses your eyes as the cursor location, right? Which again is very cool, but it requires actually interacting with everything in a completely different way, because very frequently you'll move your mouse somewhere or tap on a thing in your peripheral, right? And you hit it while you're there, like you click while you're there without really looking at it, or you'll move your mouse somewhere and then move your eyes somewhere else to like while you're clicking that. And you don't realize the extent to which there's actually a big difference in what your hands and eyes are doing while you're computing essentially. But apparently
Now you gotta sync it up.
you gotta sync it up. Yeah. So it's like, it's just such an interesting thing. Cause again, it's like, I get what you're trying to do in this case, which is to remove a lot of what feels like that kind of like the VR, appendages from the thing and make it just like so slick. But at the same time, what's actually happening from a usability standpoint is that you're largely reducing
The input space.
Input space and the control space to a point where you actually end up with those questions of like, how can I use this for long periods of time in a way that isn't like really annoying? Like I could watch something on it, sure, but like if I'm
but you can do that on a TV or a phone.
Yeah, and so again, like what? Cool.
Yeah, my prediction here is that this current version of the Apple Vision Pro is going to sell well.
I don't think so. Well, I guess I
think well, given the state that it's in, right?
It's
like
also
it's a 3,000. In my mind, it's like a 3
kind of thing, right? Like they make like 100,000 of them or something like that.
Yeah, they're going to sell out. They're going to sell out however many they make because they're going to purposely know that this is it's basically a prototype. It's a market test, right?
Sure.
The tech is really, really cool. And I think it's overall probably going to get a positive response. Also because of the fact that the people who are going to be able to get access to it are people who really, really want access to it.
Yep.
Like if you're on the fence about it, you're not going to shell out $3,500 for a limited,
the price puts it in the appropriate like market space for, isn't like it makes it only for customers who would be into it basically because of
and we've talked a lot in the past about how price reframes people's perception of things, where when we made Tower Fight 2 free, it dropped its review score by like 1.2 stars or something on Google Play. It was like 4.8 and it went to like 3.6 or 3.7 or something. It's exactly the same game. Mm-hmm. The difference is that when you lower the barrier, then people who are on the fence or maybe even like, I don't know, they might just get it anyway, just to see. And then they're like, yep, I was right. I don't like this. And then they give it a poor review. But if there's a barrier, then people have to sacrifice something and opt into the experience. And you're pre-filtering out people who wouldn't be interested.
Well, you're more likely to stick around for a while trying to figure out how to make it fun or make it work in the case of like
So I'm thinking of this as like the reason the price tag is so high, and all this stuff, and the reason that the device is so limited is like it's a proof of concept for the actual like hardware. Mm-hmm. And I think it's much less of a proof of concept for the actual use case of the thing.
Well, I think you can see that too. That will come
later.
And the fact that like there isn't any Vision Pro apps, like that's not, there's almost none. And then like,
you mean like uniquely for it? Like,
yeah, that try to take advantage of the fact that it's a VR headset, that you're wearing. The apps are basically like existing apps that happen to work fine on.
Well, this is the other problem with VR that we've talked about in the past, where like when everybody was talking about VR in 2017 during that 6-month period, right? We met so many indie developers who were like, VR's kicking off, VR's taking off, we're making a VR game. And the VR market never broke like more than .something% of the PC gaming market in terms of number.
It is big enough now. Like it is big enough that you could have a actual business case there, but the ceiling on that is like so low comparatively to like a PC game.
Well, yeah, if you make a game that is just for that, just for VR or just for the Apple Vision Pro, like if Apple says, hey, we're going to sell 100,000 of these or whatever,
that's all.
That's how many possible users you can get if you make something that is just for the Vision Pro, right? So what Apple's going to have to do is throw money at content, right?
Yeah. So, but that's the interesting thing is as far as I can tell, they didn't do that.
No, I mean the signal to me that I was also watching was like, who of the big players are participating?
Yeah, and it's nobody.
And it's nobody. Well, that's what I'm saying. This initial launch of the thing, in my mind, is a soft launch. They're just testing out the hardware. And probably in the next generation or two, it will become something that they try to angle to be like a more mass market kind of a thing, at which point they'll be building out the content ecosystem and stuff like that. But right now, to me, it's just like, wouldn't it be cool if you could strap an iPad to your head? That's basically where it is.
But
right
I
now.
think you're right. The fact that they're not throwing enormous amounts of money at making sure that there is an app ecosystem, right? That makes sense there. I think it's kind of confirmation that Apple is uncertain about. Yeah. About
they want to see if they want to see what the response is, and if the tech bears out the experience that they're trying to create right now, which is like what we're talking about, is a pretty limited experience, right? But if the tech can deliver really well on this small subset of what they want to do, or at the very least they can sort of identify low-hanging fruit and like ways to improve the experience and the tech and all that, then they can kind of build it out to a point where they can.
But I think you're still just at a point where I just have a very hard time seeing a future where everyone straps
me too. But that's what I'm saying is like I'm trying to take the I'm probably wrong here because I was totally wrong about the iPhone. You know,
how could this turn into something good, right? My answer is I don't think it can, but
it needs to drop some LBs. It's a little heavy.
I think. But if it did though, I think it's going to be kind of one of those limited things where if Apple wants to stay in this market, the fact that it's going to be a small market, especially at any kind of really significant price point, it's always going to be a subset of the other markets. Always, you're not like I just can't.
It's not a mass market.
That's a prediction I'm confident in, that like you're not going to see that form factor of like strapping goggles to your face overtake just having a phone in your pocket. Like it's not going to come anywhere close to that, right? So it's always going to be a tiny subset of the entire apps and games markets, So yeah, I just don't see a way where it's sustainable unless the price tag remains really high for that subset of users. So
which you probably will.
Which is what this is what you kind of see in the VR spaces anyway, is that like the price points are just high because that's the only way to compensate for the tiny size of the market.
Though I think now, I mean, like the Quest 3, I think it's only like $2 or $3.
Those are getting pretty cheap, yeah.
It's like cheaper than a console now.
But it's not a self-contained device, is it? Like, do you have to hook it into your PC?
I think the newer Oculuses are, but I'm not 100%.
Yeah, one of them is, and that one's more expensive, I think. But the other ones that you kind of
literally like what I want from a VR headset is I don't want a self-contained device. I already have a computer that has everything that I use on it. Like I was saying earlier, to me, it's a monitor. It's a monitor replacement, right? Mm-hmm. It's a way of seeing. Mm-hmm. Is what a VR headset is.
Of course, but also since you wear glasses, then that means you have to get, custom bespoke lenses to put in the thing that match your
prescription. It's not really a way of seeing if you can't see the world also while you're seeing other stuff.
Yeah. And I am nearsighted, so maybe, but I don't know if like it doesn't mess with your eyes because it looks 3D, but actually it's like 1 inch in front of your eyeballs. And so, but it looks like things are far away, but they're not. Yeah. Like, do your eyes, like if you're nearsighted, can you see it fine? I don't know. Because if that was the case, then I wouldn't have to wear glasses while wearing the thing, and I could see far away because it would take the images clearly from far away and then put them 1 inch in front of my eyeballs, which is pretty cool. Yeah. But yeah, like if I could get a device that could project where like my monitors and stuff like that I could just plug into my computer the same way I plug in a monitor,
But then how do you do video calls and shit when you got like a dumb device?
Because you still can't.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, you can't do. Most things.
That's what I'm getting. I'm like, there's just not a space to me for entertainment purposes. Hell yes. For very particular specialized things. Yes, it's a very cool thing that you can do and it gives you a lot of power. But for the vast majority of people under the vast majority of circumstances.
Well, but I think even those specialized things, when you're trapped on a really closed ecosystem, like I'm assuming Vision OS will behave like iPad OS, right?
Oh yeah. It's all
as in, like it's going to be a very trapped and very sandbox. So there's actually not that much you can really do. Then even those specialized use cases, I feel like are just too hard to support. So like I feel like even that kind of goes away. While in other places where you can just plug into a Mac OS or a PC, where it basically is a peripheral device that lives on top of an open or a more open ecosystem where you can actually do weird specialized stuff, right? Like I feel like there's still use cases there. Like I haven't seen any of them where I'm like, yeah, that's the thing that's a real work case, that like only works in VR that people are doing. Like I still haven't seen that for anything yet, for any kind of.
There's stuff like bodying an architectural space that you're putting together, like being able to walk through it, you know, there's stuff like,
Yeah.
That's what I mean by specialized. I'm talking specialized, not like
and not even just specialized, but fucking specific. As in,
yeah,
it's like
very,
there's
very
a
specific
thing that you're doing that's really specific, which is like I'm
Yeah,
walking
we're
around
like-
in a fake building.
Yeah, we're like, it would make sense as like a company that does that to develop basically an in-house application for this to do this thing so you can, you know, essentially better solve all these other problems associated with spatial awareness stuff. But beyond those things, yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's
Yeah, but if you do make it, like, would you choose to make it on Vision
sell that
OS versus make it more cross-platform friendly thing, so you could use cheap things like Quest Pros and stuff?
Because
you know,
my
like,
other
depends.
concern would be like if I wanted to develop an app for this thing, how much permission and interference would I have to deal with of interacting with Apple to do that, right?
Yeah.
Because it's also the case that you know, if you want to develop and like publish something on the App Store, like it does have to go through Apple's review guidelines, and
even if it's not
they're
published, right? Even if it's beta thing.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Like you can be publishing an internal beta for your own internal testing, and Apple can say, no, we're not approving this because it doesn't work. And you're like, I know that's why it's internal and I'm testing it. I know this. But like they're very particular, and they insert themselves into many steps of the development process.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're just wanting to make something for your own clients or for yourself or whatever,
Yeah, that's fair.
you know,
Which,
are you going to want to drop
the
nearly-
argument is that that's kind of all you can do, right? Because it's like you can use it for these really bespoke cases. Like that's where it might find some utility. But if they're really bespoke cases, they're not mass market. You're probably building it for in-house kind of use.
You probably
and
don't
now
want a
dealing
big
with
third party dealing with.
now dealing with that ecosystem to do internal stuff. Like why? You know, unless you're trying to part of what you're selling, of course, because if you're in those spaces where somebody is trying to do something that bespoke, it's really expensive if you're going to have a team who's going to develop that kind of stuff just for that purpose, you know? So at that point, you might be doing it because Apple stuff is also a luxury
it's
good, right?
a luxury,
And so,
yeah.
so you get to kind of
Put on
you
this.
get to show off and like, people put on this fancy headset.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. There's a signaling thing there, but again, it's like I don't know.
It's just so specific.
I just people don't want
So
to wear
there's
stuff on their
something-
face.
There's something also that's very like Jevons paradoxy about this, which is this device is equally bulky and heavy as VR devices from 5 years ago and 10 years ago.
Yeah, it weighs like twice as much as the Oculus and the Quest.
Or it's even heavier.
It's like
right?
it's very heavy. Yeah.
So even though computing power has grown and components have gotten cheaper and smaller, blah, 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 the demand for what
Yes. Right.
what capabilities they would need to have always goes up to match. And so like because of the Jevons paradox of this thing, these devices have never really delivered on the promise of like one day it'll just be like a pair of glasses that you could just put on. Right?
Well, I think it's because
like, sure, you could do that if you just want to play Doom, but that's it.
Yeah,
right?
but it's because of just the form factor, which is like it can never just
what I'm saying.
be a pair of glasses because it needs cameras, it needs LiDAR, it needs all this shit so that it knows where you are in space. It needs gyroscopes. It needs like so many things going on. And especially if it's tracking your hands without external devices, it has to be able to fucking see everywhere, right? So it's
Listen,
it has
what
to
I
be
want
covered
is a
in cameras.
motorcycle helmet that just is like, you know what? Let's embrace the fact that you want to cocoon up. You know,
and a leather jacket.
yes, comes with a leather jacket.
That's a haptic suit, of course.
Yeah.
And it's just like we know that you don't want to see anyone. You want to shut out the world. So let's just fucking go. Like, give me an insulated giant helmet that has all the tech you need to make the most ridiculous shit imaginable. And I'll fucking put that on.
And the helmet's good because when you bash your face into stuff,
Exactly.
the wall, the table, you're like, oh, let me lean down and pet that digital puppy. And then
Boom.
you smack your forehead against the table. No problem.
Well, I think
You
this
got a
is
fucking
also
bicycle,
why
motorcycle helmet
Steam's old approach to VR is in one sense a lot better, which is they do a lot more externalizing, right? Because what they have is the idea of like you kind of designate an area and then at least the original way they did it is you'd actually put like some devices up that were kind of like
Yeah, you can.
track
It's like
where
little
you are,
fence
right?
posts, basically. You can see the edge.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if they still do it that way or how it all works, but by externalizing some of that stuff, that's what allows you to take that shit off of your human body, right?
Yes.
And I think the problem with that is that those have historically been so limited because it's like you need a square space with nothing in it, 10 by 10 feet or whatever.
Yeah.
And like nobody has that, right? But I think it's kind of interesting. It's like people aren't really, it still feels like people aren't investing in like, how do we make it so that you can have, because you could put like, if it was like low energy devices that were relatively cost effective, you could put fucking 100 of them in a room. You know what I mean? Like you could just stick them everywhere. And if you could have something like that, like if that's where the investment was going, was actually focusing more and more on externalizing stuff and making that cost effective and really good, rather than continuing to try to push everything into the device. Because it just feels like the device as the endpoint is just the wrong move.
Fully self-contained.
At the end of the day, I think still, if the requirement is to put a screen on your face, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't fucking matter. I think so long as you got to put a screen in front of your own eyes, which, by the way, see a lot better than any video feed you will ever bear witness to, especially at that scale. It's just not going to go. We need holograms.
Well,
that's all I'm saying. Develop hologram technology, you know?
Yeah.
Can we just do that?
Hologram.
Let's just skip across.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
You wear like a little pin on your chest that just projects,
Yeah.
holograms out into the world.
What's
Easy
so
peasy.
hard about that? Okay.
All you got to do is figure out how to make light beams stop midair.
Yeah.
Yep.
How
and
hard
form
could that
images.
How
Well, not
hard
necessarily
could it
stop, but actually because light has to reflect off of something.
Yeah,
right?
that's
how it
you
works.
have to fabricate points of reflection in space.
Listen, I don't know how light
which is
works,
super easy.
So surely that means that it can't be that hard, you know?
It can't be that hard.
Put multiplayer into a game.
Well,
in a
armchair
weekend,
design
it's
this stuff. Yep.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, we'll see what happens with this thing.
So yeah, I guess it's basically a big shrug. I think
Shrug.
mostly I feel I'm weirded out by Apple's approach, as I guess my sort of short thing here, which is it's a really expensive device. They spent all this money on marketing and on the device, and they just spent none on the rest, on making sure there was stuff to do with it, which I just find so baffling.
Well, they thought all of us would make stuff to do for
that is true. They did,
and they thought
did
very
think
wrong.
that.
Turns out about that. So
Yeah, well, one of the obstacles is that we don't have one.
Yeah.
It's hard to
true.
develop for a device that you don't have.
Yeah.
And we still wouldn't because the market isn't there, right? But
Yeah.
But
if they had sent us one, we would be, well, we would still never do it, but
you
we would
think
be
about it.
more likely to do it. We would be 10 times more likely to do it.
Yeah.
10 times 0, but still 10 times,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah. So again, that's what I'm saying is because like to me, the approach feels weird if you're thinking of it as a mass market thing. It makes sense if you're thinking of it as a test launch / hardware test.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a prototype. It's get the prototype into the hands of really enthusiastic people, and then
well, and especially
figure
because
out
VR is
what to do.
all edge case, right? That's like which is again, it's a big part of why I just don't think it's ever going to really succeed. Is you got to put a thing on your head, you got to be looking at something
It's
that's
very
blocking your
simple.
vision,
It's like, it's
and
not-
every single part of making it work for every person in every context, so that it does what you expect 99.9% of the time, which is what it really needs to do. You know.
and doesn't make you throw
It
up.
doesn't make you throw up. It doesn't do random things on accident, et cetera. Like to get to that point, it's all edge case. Like everyone's hands are shaped different and they're different positions away from their human bodies. Everyone uses different ways of
all I'm saying
gesticulating.
is
You know, like
you
it's
don't
all
gotta
edge
go.
cases.
You don't gotta go any further than answering the question: do you strap this device to your face?
Yeah,
If
that's
the
true.
answer is yes, it's a flow chart. If the answer is yes,
It's not
who
going to be a
cares?
thing.
If the answer
Most
is
people
no,
don't want it.
won't think about it. It just doesn't matter. You got to think about anything. It's like it doesn't matter how good the tech is if you have to
You gotta
strap
put it on your face.
it to your face. I don't know
Yep.
how loud you need to shout this. It's just not. No one
Yeah,
like
the only thing that we would be able to tolerate putting on our faces in a mass market way would be just something that looked like and felt like glasses, because we're already tolerating that, you know?
Well, honestly, like I was so pissed off when I got glasses for the first time. It was weird.
it's so annoying.
Yeah.
It was so
I
annoying.
remember like coming home crying and I was like, I feel like I'm now like looking at the world through windows.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I'm inside a space now, and I am looking out through these little holes.
Yeah.
You know, and like I got used to it over time, but also my glasses weigh like an ounce.
Yeah, they
And
weigh
the
nothing.
upside is very, very good.
Yeah, the upside
which
is you get to see.
The
it.
upside is I can see, right? So it's like, but it's a very different thing than strapping like 5 pounds to my head just so I can do less than what I currently do with other
And see
devices,
worse.
you know? And see worse and
Yeah.
not be able to hear people around me or whatever. So, again, I'm fully prepared to eat crow on this.
Oh, happily. Yes.
Yeah.
Because I've been wrong about so many things, but I still just don't get it. I don't get it. So we'll see.
Well, the thing is, like, even if it turns out there is mass market appeal, like, I'm not getting one, you know? Like, will I be the last person to get a VR headset? You know, I don't, you know, but yeah.
I don't want to be stuck in the Apple hardware subscription treadmill where literally every single thing that you need for your device to function is another $200.
Yeah.
A charger, a carrying case, a fucking headphone replacement. Like, as soon as you own one of these devices, you just get, I wouldn't say nickel and dime, you get like
Mortgaged.
Yeah. You got to take out a second mortgage just to like charge the device now, you know. I just don't get it. I don't get it. But
big shrug.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll check back in next week when suddenly they somehow accidentally sold 14 million units, even though they only produced 100,000, and they're all a back order, and the world has changed forever.
Yeah,
you know?
I just don't think so. I don't think it's going to happen.
I don't think so. We'll see. Let's get on 2 questions. Highest upvoted question comes from our user CooCooCachoo, who says, "Hey, Butterscotch boys. On my current Coffee with Butterscotch marathon playthrough, I just heard you guys mention that Towel Fight 3 will be a game within Crashlands 2 that is followed by Flux falling into a puddle that leads to Quadrupus 2. This was episode 167, so this would have been
Jesus.
about 300 episodes ago, so about 5 or 6 years ago, something like that.
So
way before we were even working on Crashlands 2.
Yeah.
Probably when we were
Right before we even work on a level head, right? Or like in between.
Yeah, probably. So my question is, how's that going? Got that monocle developed through the game changer yet? How's them quadrupie elemental combo mechanics coming along? Lots of love to you all. Can't wait for Crashlands 2. Stay beautiful. So it's going okay.
Yes,
We got the first part. We've already done the first part really well, which is Crashlands 2.
Yeah, it's good.
So we're most of the way there, if you know, honestly.
That's true.
That was the hard part.
It is like, because if you want to make a turducken, you know, the most important thing is to get
Is the turd.
Yeah.
Well,
Turd.
the turd. The turd part. You got to make the outer shell so then you could stuff it with, you know, sequels.
Yeah.
So
Well, first you got to debone it, which we haven't done yet with Crashlands 2, which makes it harder to get the other games in there.
it's true. It's a little tight, a bit of a tight fit.
It's a little rigid. So
Sharpen up that bone and
Here's
knife,
the thing,
get in
though.
there.
Now I'm thinking about it, because with the game changer, you could actually make a monocle very easily.
Oh yeah, we could do that in about 15 minutes after this episode. We'd have to figure out what to do with it in the game.
Yeah.
Well,
The
it
question
shoots
is
random animals, obviously.
yeah, because it's a big moment that the moment we bring in the monocle, you know, from Talfight, then we've done that now. We've taken that big piece of lore. Actually, did we? I feel like the monocle's in OG Crashlands.
It's The monocle is the focusing lens that you have to use to open the wormhole.
Yeah.
Doesn't it get sucked into the wormhole at the end?
I don't remember.
I can't remember
I think it did.
if the monocle. I can't remember.
We probably need to look back into the monocle for
I don't know what's
storytelling
happening,
purposes in Crashlands 2, because
Yeah, we're just assuming that it's like depleted of power or it's gone or something.
I think it's
it's probably in the void. You know, so just something.
But really,
something's got to get it back out of the void. We need the void fishing rod. You know, so you could go fishing into the void and pull up the monocle, and then.
But the monocle isn't. It isn't particularly unique or special. It was a regular monocle that got infused with excessive juice power by a Viru helmet.
I mean, that's what
right?
makes
So, like,
it special and powerful. You know?
Well, that is, but like
It's basically
that could happen to many other things. You know what I mean? It's not one of a kind in the sense that like it was an artifact created by a Viru.
You're saying it's like a Horcrux. There could be dozens of these.
There could be dozens of things like it, you know, and so it's not a total loss if it's gone. You know what I mean?
But the thing is, though, that's true from if you're not taking into account lore and fan service, you know, because you got to bring back the same shit over and over and over again until people are sick of it. But that's how you
true.
make a sequel.
Both of our Towel Fight 2 fans are going to be really upset if we don't keep bringing that monocle back.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, we have talked in the past about like nesting games within games. And it's something that you see a lot in AAA titles.
Where you can sit down and play Gwent or go play chess or whatever the fuck, where it's like there's somebody made that whole game that already exists or made like a whole new one. I do love that stuff.
Yeah.
But you do have to have a lot of, with a reason, but then also just a lot of extra time.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, to me, it's actually a parallel resources problem, which is it's very hard to justify stopping all development on the current game in order to add like a chess mini game or something, which is what you have to do when you're on a team of our size.
Yes, that's true.
If you have 1,000 people working on your game, then you could have 5 of them working on this mini game.
Some things for people to do in off time,
you
which adding a whole parallel game dev track inside probably is a good way to spend your resources, to be honest. Because
so it
would be pretty dope if we had if you could make an arcade cabinet in Crashlands 2 and play Flop Rocket on it.
I want to make like a locals game, like whatever the checkers equivalent is on local. You can go because I love. I mean, the Gwent thing I think was hilarious, where you could just like go throw down. It's like playing poker with the locals in like a saloon. You know what I mean? Like that feels more inward and cool than like arcade.
I mean, one time, a long time ago, probably within like my first year of learning how to program games, I made a chess game. It was Chess 2. I made the sequel to Chess.
Oh yeah.
Because as far as I knew at that time, nobody made a sequel.
I think there is a popular Chess 2 that somebody also made.
Yeah, but mine was first, so I'm gonna be suing. But all I did was I added an extra ability to each of the chess pieces. Mm-hmm. So like a pawn could put down a gas canister in the space in front of it, which would block that space for one turn. Or like I can't remember all the shit that I had. I think it was like the rook could swap places with any bishop or something like that. So like there were just some weird extra rules in there for each piece, and it was kind of
fun.
It was kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. Like it was kind of fun to play. Like because you suddenly had to elevate your chess strategy to try to think about.
It's basically teamfight tactics, where it's like almost an auto battler. Each unit has stats and abilities, and you got to know all of them and to manage all the placements and everything else.
Yeah.
So you're ahead of yourself.
So but that literally took me like 2 days to make. I didn't do anything with it because you'd either have to make it multiplayer or program a chess playing AI, which is pretty hard. So I didn't do either of those things. I just threw it in the garbage after I made it. But it's like this. Like most problems that we deal with are integration problems.
Yes.
Where I could program up a chess game this weekend, no problem. Now what?
Yep.
Like where does it go in Crashlands 2, and how do you get at it? And like does it have a separate progression track? Like do the characters talk about it?
Solving the like local problem of making a mini game is really just a non-issue, but making it good in the context of the thing and meaningful and hook in like all these beautiful ways. Pain in the shorts.
Yeah. Making it a part of the world instead of just something that you fire up in an arcade cabinet that has nothing to do with anything.
I actually really don't like arcade cabinets. This is one of my pet peeves in games, especially like where did I play recently? I can't remember if it's Cyberpunk. There's some other game I played recently where there's just like an arcade cabinet and you just go up to it and they just have, I think it was Cyberpunk, and they just have like really dumb mini games in it. Which like granted, like in Cyberpunk, it's like that they built like a whole fucking city. So like, sure, I guess there's an arcade. But at the same time, I was like, I don't know. I'm not a fan.
In this insane technological dystopian future.
Yeah, I was like, why is there like a pixel art horse game on this arcade? Why is there even an arcade cabinet?
Yeah, people could just project games into their brain lobes probably.
Yeah, what are we doing?
The problem with Cyberpunk, right, is like from a meta level, is you're playing this dystopian, super cyber sort of future, right? So the games in there would need to be like even actually more intense and extreme than the actual game you're playing right now. So if you wanted to have like, I'm gonna go strap on because they do stuff in like VR, like full
brain
body
dance
VR stuff, right?
Yeah, but they're not games. You just like wander around. Okay, cool.
But it's like you see that Rick and Morty episode where Morty puts on the headset and plays the game Roy, where you live an entire life as like in this other.
That's essentially what those brain dances are in Cyberpunk.
Yeah. Actually,
so it takes like a minute.
I've started catching up on Rick and Morty over the past few days because apparently I hadn't seen. There's like 2 whole seasons I hadn't seen, which I didn't even know. But I don't know if you guys are caught up. But there is another, because I think the Roy video game, the one where you just live another person's life for their entire 60-year lifespan or whatever. it returns as for another whole very bizarre plot line.
It was a really interesting premise, right? Of like how that would kind of mess you up because like you're living this life with this other person for so long because it's like in real time in your mind.
Yeah.
An entire
and you
lifetime,
don't
right?
know that you're just playing a game. Actually, like you are that person.
Yeah, and then when the game ends, which it ends when Roy dies somehow, either you like got sick or you got into an accident or whatever, and then you wake up again, and then
like a few hours have passed in real life, right? But
but then you remember your whole life and everything led up to you starting playing as Roy. And you now afterwards know that it was not real, but you experienced more of that life than you did of your own life.
Yep.
Right? Because if you live to be like 95 years old in the game of Roy, then you experienced an entire lifetime.
Yeah,
but you might be like 16 in the real world.
They recover quickly because it's Rick and Morty.
Because it's a cartoon. Yeah. That's pretty fucking wild.
Well, I did want to actually mention because I forgot we as far as a Crashlands 2 update, real quick, that we did put we did get click to move in. This
Yeah.
Which is something we had gotten requested during the alpha, as well as some stuff people were talking about. It's not the same as the original Crashlands where everything's you just click.
It's not one-click gameplay for everything. It's just the movement aspect.
Right. Yeah. So you can control it with a mouse while you're wandering around and doing stuff. And that's great. So that's nice. Just nice little tidbit.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something that we've been, I don't want to say apprehensive about, but just like anticipating people being a little bit a little bit disjointed if they were really familiar with playing the first game, which is just click. Click on that to cut it, click on here to go there, click on this thing. And so what that led to in the first game is precision controls are very difficult because you only have one way of interacting with the world. And so the combat is a lot more slower paced and you don't have to like worry about aiming or whatever.
It's very flat.
Yeah. So in Crashlands 2, we wanted to give you more ways to sort of, engage with the world. And so that's where we have ways for you to aim your abilities with different shapes of telegraphs. And you have this juke ability where you can quickly zip out of a space, and that means that we can't just do straight one-touch gameplay because you can't like aim in a direction before using an ability if you just click on a thing. But then also you can use a bunch of different kinds of items on the same thing. And so when you click on something, we wouldn't know what you wanted to do, right? So the game is a lot deeper and has a lot more things going on, making it so that one-touch thing can't fully carry over. But it does feel good to be able to just like click a spot in the world and your character goes over there. Especially if you're traversing a longer distance, being able to just kind of like click and hold your mouse cursor and just kind of lead the character.
I think it's very good mode wise for just kind of flipping into a more casual
vibing.
Yeah, where you're just like, I'm just going to cut down some trees and just kind of just using the mouse, just hanging out, vibing,
Yeah.
I think it works pretty good. So I'm excited about
this is a pretty good update. All right, well, thank you for the question. That's all the time we have for this week. We'd like to thank our producers, Fat Bard and Sampa DaCosta, for putting the podcast together, and thanks to our community moderators who keep our Discord running. To get more involved in the Butterscotch community, just go to podcast.bscotch.net, where we have links to the community Discord, a way for you to donate, and links to the podcast archives. And as always, if you haven't yet, head on over to Steam, give Crashlands 2 a wish list. It'll help boost the game in the charts. The algorithm will see it and bless us if you do this. I would appreciate it immensely. So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.